The night Hollywood told Dwayne Johnson he was finished didn't happen on a red carpet. It didn't happen in a meeting room full of suits. It happened alone, inside a rented car, parked under a flickering streetlight in Los Angeles. It was late. Past midnight. The city was quiet in that artificial way only LA gets, traffic distant, neon signs humming, palm trees barely moving in the warm air. Dwayne sat behind the wheel, hands resting on his thighs, staring through the windshield without really seeing anything. Minutes earlier, the call had ended. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just, final. We're going in a different direction. You're not what the studio is looking for right now. You had a good run, but this might be it. That was the message. Wrapped in polite words, delivered calmly, but heavy enough to crush a career. Dwayne leaned his head back against the seat. Closed his eyes. Exhaled slowly. He'd heard versions of this before, but never with this tone. This wasn't rejection. This was a verdict. In Hollywood terms, "you're done" rarely sounds cruel. It sounds reasonable. Inevitable. Like gravity. He thought about the last few years. Leaving wrestling behind. Being told a wrestler could never be a real actor. Taking the roles no one else wanted. Smiling through interviews while quietly wondering if everyone was right. Outside the car, someone laughed as they walked past. A group heading into a bar. Life moving forward, indifferent. Inside, Dwayne felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Not fear. Not anger. Doubt. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A list he'd written months earlier. Goals. Plans. A future he was supposed to be building. Now Hollywood had just crossed it out with a single phone call. For the first time since leaving the ring, quitting didn't feel like weakness. It felt logical. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel, stayed there longer than he wanted to admit. No cameras, no fans, no expectations. Just a man being told, very clearly, that the door was closing. And what Dwayne Johnson didn't know yet, was that this night, the one meant to end everything, was about to force him into a decision that would change his entire life. Dwayne stayed in the car long after the engine went cold. The silence pressed in from every side. No crowd noise. No entrance music. No script to memorize. Just his own thoughts, louder than anything he'd faced in the ring. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. When he left wrestling, everyone said the same thing: "You're risking everything." But he believed in work ethic. In showing up early. In outworking doubt. He thought effort would eventually silence skepticism. Instead, skepticism had just called him personally. He thought about the auditions that never led anywhere. The polite smiles from casting directors who stopped listening the moment they heard "former wrestler." The roles that came with fewer lines, then no lines at all. Characters that existed just to get hit, thrown, or killed off. He had played the game the way they told him to. Lost weight when they asked. Changed his look. Softened his presence. Tried to be less, him. And now they were telling him it still wasn't enough. His phone buzzed. A text from his agent. Short. Careful. We'll talk tomorrow. Get some rest. Rest. As if sleep could fix this. Dwayne stared at the message, then locked the phone and placed it face down on the passenger seat. For the first time, a thought crept in that scared him more than failure. What if they're right? He imagined going back. Wrestling would take him. The crowd would welcome him like nothing happened. The money would be there. The certainty. It would be easy. Too easy. But then he imagined explaining that decision to himself 10 years from now. Admitting that the first time Hollywood pushed back hard enough, he folded. His jaw tightened. He thought about his father. The lessons about pride. About standing your ground even when no one is watching. About knowing who you are when the applause stops. Outside, the streetlight flickered again. On. Off. On. Dwayne finally sat up straight. Took a deep breath. Reached for his phone, not to call anyone, not to beg, not to argue. He opened his notes app and started typing. Not goals this time. Not dreams. Rules. Rules for what he would never do again. Rules that would cost him comfort, but give him something else. Control. And as he typed, something shifted. The doubt didn't disappear, but it stopped owning the room. Because walking away suddenly felt like the safe choice. And Dwayne Johnson had never built his life by choosing safe. The audition was scheduled for the next morning. Not a lead role, not even a supporting one, just a read. Dwayne arrived early, like always. Sat alone in the waiting area while assistants hurried past him without eye contact. The walls were covered with framed posters, faces that belonged, faces that had already been chosen. He stood out immediately. Too big. Too solid. Too recognizable. Two younger actors sat across from him, whispering. One glanced at Dwayne's arms, then smirked. "Is this for a superhero thing?" the guy muttered, not quietly enough. The other laughed. "Nah. Probably playing the bodyguard again." Dwayne kept his eyes forward. Calm. Still. The same discipline that kept him composed in wrestling locker rooms full of egos twice as loud. The casting assistant finally called his name. Not excited. Not dismissive. Just procedural. Inside the room, 3 people sat behind a folding table. Coffee cups. Laptops. Mild boredom. They looked up when he entered. And something shifted. Not interest. Calculation. One of them smiled thinly. "So, you're the wrestler." "Former wrestler," Dwayne corrected gently. The reader across the table raised an eyebrow. "Right." They handed him the sides. 2 pages. Minimal dialogue. Mostly reactions. The kind of role where presence matters more than words. Dwayne took a breath and began. He didn't perform. He listened. He let silence do the work. Let stillness carry weight. The room, despite itself, leaned in. Then he finished. A pause. One of the producers exchanged a look with another. Not impressed. Not disappointed. Confused. "Okay," someone said. "Thanks for coming in." That was it. As Dwayne turned to leave, he heard it. A quiet laugh. "Good effort," a voice said. "But, we're looking for someone more believable." Believable. The word followed him down the hallway, through the lobby, out into the sunlight. Believable meant smaller. Softer. Safer. Back in his car, Dwayne didn't start the engine right away. He stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The same face that sold out arenas. The same presence that commanded millions. And somehow, still not enough. What he didn't know yet was that someone in that room had hesitated. Just for a moment. And that hesitation, small, unnoticed, was about to turn into a phone call no one expected. The call came late that afternoon. Dwayne was halfway through a workout. Headphones on, sweat dripping onto the gym floor, when his phone vibrated against the bench. He almost ignored it. Almost. Unknown number. He answered. "Dwayne, it's Mark from casting." For a second, he thought it was a courtesy call. A polite wrap-up. "Thanks again for your time." Instead, the voice hesitated. "There was some debate after you left." Dwayne stood still. The noise of the gym faded. "Not everyone was convinced," Mark continued. "But one producer asked us to bring you back in. Just a conversation. No promises. No promises. But not a no." Dwayne closed his eyes. Exhaled. "I'll be there." That evening, he sat across from the same producer who had laughed. Same folding table. Same coffee cups. Different tone. "You surprised us," the producer said. "You're not what we expected." Dwayne didn't smile. Didn't apologize. He waited. "You're intense," the producer continued. "Almost too intense. The role isn't written for someone like you." Dwayne leaned forward slightly. "Calm. Controlled. Then change the role," he said. The room went quiet. The producer laughed, this time, unsure. "That's not how this works." "Then you don't need me," Dwayne replied, evenly. "Because I'm done pretending to be less than I am." Silence stretched. Risk filled the air. This was the moment he usually backed down. Softened. Compromised. He didn't. Finally, the producer nodded. "We'll see what we can do." When Dwayne walked out, his phone buzzed again. A text from his agent. "What did you say in there?" Dwayne looked back at the building. The door. The hallway. The room where he had almost disappeared. The answer was simple. The truth. And that truth, spoken once, without fear, was about to put him on a path Hollywood couldn't ignore anymore. The meeting didn't end with applause. It ended with uncertainty. Days passed. Then a week. No contract. No callback. No clear answer. In the past, that silence would have eaten at Dwayne. He would have replayed every word, every pause, wondering if he'd said too much. This time, something was different. He kept training. Kept showing up. But mentally, he had already stepped back. He stopped chasing roles that asked him to shrink. Stopped reading scripts that treated him like a prop instead of a presence. Each "no" felt lighter than the last. Then the real test came. His agent called. Voice careful. "They want you," he said. "But they need a few things." Dwayne already knew what was coming. "They want you smaller. Less muscle. Different energy. More friendly." Dwayne listened without interrupting. And, the agent added, "They want a long-term option. Multiple films. But only if you agree to their direction." Dwayne stared out the window. Traffic moved slowly below. People rushing toward places they didn't want to be. This was the deal he'd been waiting for once. Security. Exposure. Momentum. At a cost. He thought about the rules he'd written in his phone. The ones he promised himself he wouldn't break. "Tell them no," Dwayne said. The line went quiet. "You're sure?" the agent asked. "This could be big." "It could be wrong," Dwayne replied. "And I'm done building someone else's version of me." He hung up before doubt could catch up. That night, he went for a drive. Same streets. Same city. Different feeling. Walking away didn't feel like failure anymore. It felt like ownership. And somewhere behind the scenes, a different studio was paying attention. One that didn't want him smaller. They wanted him exactly as he was. The meeting wasn't announced as important. No dramatic invite. No urgency in the voice message. Just, "They want to talk." Dwayne almost skipped it. Almost. The studio was smaller. Quieter. No marble lobby. No wall of awards. The kind of place that didn't try to impress, because it didn't need to. He sat across from two executives who actually listened. Not nodded. Listened. "We saw the audition," one of them said. "Not just the tape. The moments before and after. The way the room reacted when you left." Dwayne raised an eyebrow. That was new. "You're not trying to fit," the other added. "You're trying to redefine the space." That word landed. Redefine. They didn't ask him to change his body. Didn't ask him to soften his presence. Didn't ask him to apologize for being big. Instead, they asked one question. What do you want to do? No one had asked him that before. Dwayne thought for a moment. Not long. I want to play characters who don't beg for permission, he said. Men who walk into a room and change the energy. The executives exchanged a glance. This time, it wasn't doubt. It was alignment. We think there's a lane for that, one of them said. It's risky. But safe doesn't create stars. When Dwayne left the building, the sun was setting. The city looked the same, but it felt different. He hadn't booked the role yet. Nothing was signed. But for the first time in months, he felt something solid under his feet. Not hope. Direction. And that night, his phone rang again. This call sounded nothing like the last one. The phone rang just after 9 p.m. Dwayne was at home, sitting on the edge of the couch, forearms resting on his knees. The TV was on, muted. He wasn't watching. He rarely did these days. He answered without looking at the screen. Dwayne, the voice said, steady and direct. It's the studio. No small talk. No build-up. We're moving forward. Dwayne didn't respond right away. He'd learned that sometimes silence carries more weight than excitement. The role isn't exactly what it was, the voice continued. We rewrote parts of it. Around you. That sentence landed harder than any applause ever had. Around you. They explained the vision. A character with presence. Authority. Someone who didn't explain himself. Someone the camera respected the moment he walked into frame. Not a joke. Not background. Not disposable. We don't want you to fit, the executive said. We want you to lead. Dwayne closed his eyes. Not in relief, in recognition. This was the moment everything before had been preparing him for. There were still risks. The budget wasn't massive. The expectations weren't guaranteed. If it failed, there would be no safety net. But if it worked. I'm in, Dwayne said. After the call ended, he stayed seated for a long time. The house was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, his kid slept. Linda moved softly in the kitchen. Nothing about the room had changed. But everything had. This wasn't validation from Hollywood. It was permission he'd given himself months ago, finally being answered. And Dwayne understood something clearly now. The night Hollywood said he was done wasn't a rejection. It was a filter. It removed the paths that weren't meant for him. So the right one could finally open. The first day on set felt different. Not louder. Not more glamorous. Quieter. Dwayne noticed it the moment he walked in. Crew members glanced up, then back to their work, but slower this time. Curious. Measuring. This wasn't skepticism. This was recalibration. He stood in wardrobe as a costume assistant adjusted his jacket. No jokes about his size. No comments about wrestling. Just focus. You ready? The director asked. Dwayne nodded. The scene was simple. Dialogue light. Mostly presence. He entered a room, crossed the floor, stopped. Action. Dwayne didn't rush. He didn't perform. He occupied. The room shifted. Extras forgot to act. One of them missed a cue. The director didn't cut. He was watching Dwayne. The scene ended. Silence. Then the director smiled. Not the polite kind. That, he said, is exactly what we were hoping for. Word spreads fast on sets. Faster than rumors in casting offices. By lunch, people were talking. Quietly. Respectfully. He's different. He doesn't force it. He doesn't chase the camera. Dwayne sat alone between takes, reading, headphones in. Same habits. Same discipline. But now, no one laughed. Later that day, his agent texted. Already getting calls. Dwayne looked up at the lights. The cables. The controlled chaos of filmmaking. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt steady. Because he knew something most people didn't. This didn't happen because Hollywood changed its mind. It happened because he refused to change who he was. And the industry was finally catching up. Success didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. A meeting here. A script request there. Names he'd never heard of suddenly recognizing his voice on the phone. But late one night, after a 14-hour shoot, Dwayne sat alone in his trailer and felt the weight again. Exhaustion has a way of reopening old doubts. He stared at the mirror. Same face. Same scars. Same shoulders that once carried an entirely different dream. Wrestling was predictable. Controlled. Familiar. Acting still wasn't. He thought about how easy it would be to go back. A headline. A surprise return. A guaranteed reaction. For a moment, just a moment, he imagined it. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Linda. The kids asked when you're coming home. They're proud of you. Proud. Not impressed. Not excited. Proud. Dwayne leaned back and closed his eyes. That word settled everything. This wasn't about proving Hollywood wrong anymore. It was about building something that didn't disappear the moment applause stopped. The doubt didn't vanish. It never does. But it lost its power. He stood up, rolled his shoulders, and stepped back onto set. When the camera rolled, he didn't think about the past. He didn't think about the future. He stayed exactly where he needed to be. And that was the final test. Years later, people would talk about Dwayne Johnson's rise like it was inevitable. Like the outcome was obvious. Like strength alone carried him through. They never talk about that night. The night he sat alone in a parked car while Hollywood quietly closed the door. The night quitting felt logical. The night walking away almost won. Because the truth is, nothing ended that night. It clarified. Hollywood didn't defeat him. It tested him. It asked a simple question without words. Are you willing to disappear to become yourself? Dwayne never answered out loud. He answered with choices. With the auditions he stopped begging for. With the roles he refused to shrink into. With the silence he accepted instead of chasing approval. The industry didn't suddenly become fair. It became aware. Not because he demanded respect, but because he stopped negotiating his identity. That's the part people miss. The moment he almost quit acting forever wasn't a failure point. It was a line in the sand. On one side, safety, familiarity, applause on demand. On the other, uncertainty, growth, a version of himself that didn't ask permission. He chose the harder side. And once that choice was made, everything else followed. Not overnight. Not easily. But honestly. Hollywood didn't make Dwayne Johnson. It tried to discard him. And when it failed, it had no choice but to adapt. Because the night they said, "You're done," was the same night he stopped being available for endings. And that's when his real story began.